And that's an important thing that I don't think people realize is if you're faking it, you're going to attract other people are too, because people are going to recognize that.
There's a big difference between looking better and actually being better. I'm going to say that one more time. There's a huge difference between looking better and actually being better.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, Next Level You weekly live podcast, week number 97, Why You Shouldn't Fake It Till You Make It. So Alan and I have been at this for many years, many moons, as they would say, and we have come across a lot of people who are trying to be, or trying to pretend they're better than they actually are, and in social media, sometimes that works, but behind the scenes, when you get to meet people, you realize pretty quickly that pretenders are not in it for the long run and honestly not going to win. So if you have ever felt like maybe faking it till you faking it till you making it would be easier for you, this episode is going to dispel that myth, hopefully.
Fire. I think the first thing that I want to say to open up here is fulfillment comes from who you really are, not who other people perceive you to be. If Kevin and I give a speech in front of 1,000 people, we have 1,000 different reputations. In other words, 1,000 different perspectives and subjective perspectives on who we are as men, as individuals, but we only have one character. We only have one of us, each of us, that our head hits the pillow at night, and we go to bed either fulfilled or not based on who we really are, not who others perceive us to be. So the very first thing here is just understand that it is a losing game, even if it wins in the short term, even if you get more listens or more followers. At the end of the day, if fulfillment is what you're going for, that only comes from the tried and true virtues and fundamentals that Kevin and I try every day to live by more and more.
Do you want to go into that point? Because I know you have a deeper point for that. Do you want to start there?
I do. All right, so this is what I wrote down. You won't be fulfilled because fulfillment comes from authenticity. And so if you've ever, think about your past. Have you ever lied and taken credit for something that you really didn't do? While that might have worked, or perhaps you were in high school and you cheated. I cheated on a spelling test once, and I've told you this story. It was in Mr. Smith's class. And Kevin, Kiki and I, my buddy Kiki and I, the night before, we would have this little cheat sheet that we would put, near us, and I'm not proud of this. And it was the one time when Mr. Smith used, the word was malign, M-A-L-I-G-N, and I didn't know what it meant, and this was the first time where I really needed the sentence for context. And he said, I went fishing this past weekend. My line broke. And I was like, oh, I'm in trouble. That didn't help me at all, right? Here's my point, though. It didn't feel good. While I still got hundreds on those spelling tests, it didn't feel good. And I'm lucky that I outgrew that cheating thing from a very young age. Virtue is fulfilling, and virtue only comes from what you're really doing behind the scenes. Kevin and I are very fortunate at this point to go on a lot of other podcasts. And every single time I'm on a podcast and they ask this question, which is actually quite frequently, what does it mean to be next level? I always say the same exact answer. I say the only answer I can really give is, who are you when no one's watching? Who are you and what are you doing when no one's watching? A challenging workout later tonight after a long day when no one's watching. I'll be in the gym with Emilia, so technically she'll be watching. But that matters to me more than, or just as much as, this episode right here. See, this is going to be heard by hundreds, if not thousands of people. And I'm just as focused on my conscious effort in the gym by myself tonight. Not by myself, but with Emilia. But you understand the concept. What does it mean to be next level? What it means to be next level is, who are you and what are you doing when no one's watching? Because breaking the promises you make to yourself and not being authentic and being fake, it's never going to fulfill you.
Alan spoke to this a little bit. Alan and I have been on a lot of shows at this point, and we go on podcasts every single week, sometimes multiple times a week. And I checked my calendar the other day when I woke up. I usually check my calendar last thing before I go to sleep and then first thing when I wake up, just to make sure things haven't changed. And I was looking at a podcast that I was supposed to be on. And in the fine print of this, and this was nowhere on the application, there was nowhere on this person's profile, but in the fine print, it said everybody who is a guest on the show is required to pay a $50 fee. Since we are such a big show and we have so many people reaching out, there's no way for us to avoid this, or whatever it was. And I said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to pay to be on somebody else's show, because I know we're bigger than the show and we've never charged anybody to be on our show. That's not how it works. So when I saw this, the first thing I thought to myself was, okay, something is astray here. So I searched this podcast. And when I searched this podcast, this show had something like 459 5-star reviews and no other reviews. No 4-star, no 3-star, no 2-star, 1-star. Only 459 5-star reviews. And I said, okay, that's a red flag. Just statistically, the best restaurants in the world get 4, 3, 2, and 1-star reviews. It just is the way it is if you're looking at it from a statistics standpoint. But I started going through these reviews, and it's very clear that these are not real reviews. Some of them didn't even use the right name of the host. And I'm going through these reviews, and this probably isn't the best use of my time, but it does help me understand the scheme and the landscape of the podcast industry, right? And it became very clear to me that this person is not a real podcaster, probably not a successful podcaster, and this person is faking it. And they're going to try to fake it until they make it. This is the problem. When you're trying to fake it until you make it, you're always going to be afraid to be found out. And this is the truth. You will be found out by people whose awareness is higher or at the same level as yours. I know for a fact that person's show is not that big. I know. And the reason is they're probably not doing the right things to make their show grow. They're doing the things to make them look successful. So they can charge $50 a guest, or so they can charge whatever they're charging to be featured on their website, or whatever it may be. Maybe they're charging to go on other people's shows. It's very clear to people who have a higher awareness when you're faking it till you make it. And I know for certain this person will not be successful long-term, because what they're doing is not sustainable. They're not sustainable. You know what that means to me? They probably didn't find a way to make money in their podcast. And that's probably what they came up with. Well, we'll just charge people when they come on. We'll have a lot of reviews. We'll tell them we have millions of downloads. They don't. I know for a fact they don't, because if they did, they wouldn't have to charge people to come on their show. Like, they wouldn't have to make money off people coming on. So if you are faking it so you make it, you will always be afraid to be found out. And honestly, you will be found out eventually. Somebody with higher awareness will see right through that facade.
So Kev, you'll like this because you were snowboarding this past weekend.
I was shredding the gnar.
You were shredding the gnar?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. I've never heard that before in my life. I think
obviously, you're not a real snowboarder. I've heard stories about you, but you never heard that before.
So growing up, I had to choose between basketball and ski club. They didn't let you do both. I chose ski club. I was on a mountain when I was 4 years old. I have little videos of me skiing. So I adore being on the mountain. I adore skiing. I adore snowboarding even more. And I did it for a very, very long time, many, many years. And I haven't done it in a while, but that's going to change. So at Wachusett Mountain, Kev, you've been there. Mm-hmm. There's a mountain in Massachusetts called Wachusett Mountain. It's like 30 minutes north of where I'm living right now. And there's this run called, and Kevin will remember this, Ralph's Run.
Ralph's Run.
You remember Ralph's Run?
Mm-hmm.
Good old faithful Ralph's Run.
Mm-hmm.
Ralph's Run is very easy. It's a very easy trail. And we had a group of friends that were all pretty good snowboarders, definitely on the Black Diamond expert level for sure. And we had a new friend who kind of came into our friend group and was a little bit behind. He switched from skiing to snowboarding much later than the other friends. And I'll never forget when we would all race down, Smith was the name of it. Do you remember Smith, the Black Diamond?
I don't remember Smith.
Spent a lot of time on Ralph's Run, not so much on
No,
Smith.
the Black Diamonds on Wachusett aren't real Black Diamonds. Everybody knows that.
They might as well be green circles.
Yeah, come on.
But anyways, so there's the summit and then there's Ralph's Run. Ralph's Run's very easy. It's for beginners and it's a very enjoyable run. But this person didn't want to go to the Black Diamonds with us because he didn't want to show the contrast between his level as a novice/beginner and us experts, quote unquote. And the problem with that is this. You're not going to get better if you don't challenge yourself. Ralph's Run is enjoyable and fun. And this person, me and this person snowboarding together on Ralph's Run, there's not a big difference. You can't really tell the difference. Now let's go even beyond that. Imagine if we went to a huge mountain up in Maine, Sugarloaf. I used to snowboard at Sugarloaf, and that's even bigger. And it literally has a sign, I swear to God, Kev, that says, fall to your death. Don't do this double black diamond unless you're willing to die. So if you go this way, you could die, just so you know. And most snowboarders don't go down that. It's usually mostly skiers because it's like vertical. The point is this. If you're trying to fake it till you make it, you're most likely not challenging yourself incrementally so that you can get better. There was a point in my snowboarding career when I would only want to be on Ralph's Run, but eventually I took that leap of faith and I went to, the summit. And then even though I was maybe not the best at that time, that's what got me better. And so there's a big difference between looking better and actually being better. I'm going to say that one more time. There's a huge difference between looking better and actually being better. So, for example, at the beach, if you haven't been putting in the work, it's difficult to cover up whether or not you've been exercising consistently or dieting. But in the winter, when you can wear bigger clothes, it's easier to sort of cover that up. And so are you more focused on looking better or actually being better? Because only you alone in front of the mirror, both metaphorically and literally, know whether or not you're actually putting in the work. And so, again, this is why you shouldn't fake it till you make it. One of the reasons is because you're going to focus too much on looking better and not enough on actually being better. And ultimately, in the long run, not only is the only thing that matters being better, but it's going to fulfill you as well, because looking better doesn't actually fulfill you.
Alan, I have a point on this, but I want to ask a question.
What's happening, man?
Are you ready?
Is it about shredding the gnar?
No. We'll stay off of that for now. What do you think the correlation between ego and faking it till you make it? I find that not a lot of people on the low end, I think, some people on the low end of Drive to 5 might fake it till they make it, but I think that's from a not enoughness place versus trying to look good. And for those new listeners that don't know what the Drive to 5 is, just think low on the Drive to 5, 0 is somebody who has a lot of self-doubt. They don't have a lot of confidence. They're very insecure. They don't think they'll be successful. They're afraid to ask for help. They're afraid of feedback. Somebody on the high end of Drive to 5, the polar opposite. They don't think they need help. They are overconfident. They don't think they need a mentor in their life because they think they'll be successful no matter what. So I think those people are usually the higher end of the Drive to 5 or the fakers. What is your take on? What is your take on all that?
On all that.
Yeah.
My take is, and I've never gotten a chance to explain this on the podcast before, so I'm grateful we're doing this. I think there's a big difference between outward arrogance and inward arrogance. So I'm someone who might come off as outwardly arrogant. I believe a lot of that is through real calculation and actual confidence and capabilities and work ethic and virtue. But I know someone who, I'll give you an example of this. One of my main core values on a flashcard that's in my pocket right now is humility in action. I'm going to anonymously talk about one of my past friends. This past friend of mine, everyone believes is very modest, genuinely, very humble. And there's some truth to that. But inwardly, he believes he knows it all. And so, for example, I bought this book on basic economics. It's a very thick economics book. That is humility in action. I'm showing with my actions by buying books that I know I don't know everything, whereas this other person would have a very strong opinion about economics but never really study it. And so to answer your original question, Kev, I do think there's truth to that. I think that people who are inwardly arrogant, aka on the high end of Drive to 5, typically are the ones who fake it till they make it much more. And I've been guilty of that in certain arenas too, so I don't want to make it seem like this is something that I'm above. It's not. I'm guilty of this too, but you have to override that quality of, I would rather appear better than actually be better. You have to override that, because if you don't, you're not going to learn from extraordinary people. You're not going to buy books. I mean, I know some people who know very little and think they know it all, and you can all think of someone like that. Think of someone who knows very, very little but thinks they know everything, and then think of someone who doesn't even think they know that much, but yet they're studying every day, right? Emilia is a perfect example of that. She reads books on Sunday. She has a math book by her bedside table, and she's actually fairly extraordinary at math, and she's in spreadsheets all the time, and she's in IT at Alchemies, and yet she's still the one who's the most studious. And so I think that's the best way to answer the question is, ask yourself, am I inwardly arrogant, or am I just seemingly arrogant because I actually have real confidence?
I remember early on back in the Hyper Conscious podcast days, our guest vetting was much different. How we went about getting guests was much different than it is today. And we also didn't have as many people reaching out, but we were supposed to have this gentleman on the podcast. And I use the term gentleman loosely now after knowing more about this person. But we ended up saying, you know what? I don't think this is aligned. We're not going to do it. And I think we made up an excuse. We said something came up because we weren't courageous enough to say.
No, we didn't. I told him the truth. I said,
no, this isn't that one.
Oh, this isn't that one. Okay.
No.
Sorry, man.
That's proof that we've done this more than once.
Okay.
This was early, like you're in your sister's room early.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. This was a while ago. And
I know what you're talking about now. Yeah.
So this person, I think we made up an excuse and we said, something happened and we just didn't want to do it, whatever. We were in Florida later that year. And somebody we know, we had a mutual friend who was working with this person, and he's like, hey, you got to meet this guy. I know you're supposed to have him on the show, but he's awesome. He's super successful. He's having a pool party tonight. There's going to be models. You guys got to be there. And we were like, honest, I don't really know. Don't care. We're down here for work. Like, we have an event coming up. That's what we're here for. He's like, don't worry about it. I'm going to ask him for you guys. And this person asked this other person for us if we could come to the pool party. And he's like, no. They are not allowed at my pool party. They showed me up in their podcast. They wasted my time. They didn't respect who I was as a person, blah, 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 whatever. I don't want to come to your pool party anyway, sir. But later we found out that this person was running a company that was very Wolf of Wall Street-like. They were telling people to do drugs before the day, and it was a very toxic masculine environment. And Alan and I have been, from the beginning, focused on our character. So if we were faking it till we made it, we would have wanted to get in the room with this individual. And if we were faking it till we make it, we would attract other fakers. And that's an important thing that I don't think people realize is if you're faking it, you're going to attract other people are too, because people are going to recognize that. And I do think that, like Alan pointed out in the question I asked him, I think there are some character traits that go into some people on that side of the Drive to 5. This person was just ego. It was an ego-driven individual who was pretending that they were charitable, who was pretending that he cared about certain things that he didn't. And again, number one, we could smell that out, but you're going to attract other fakers and you're going to be in an environment full of that toxicity, and that's just not a good place to be. And then it's so much harder to get out of it. Then you have to start from square one and go back to the drawing board, which is also very difficult.
Hi everyone, my name is Amy. I am part of the NLU team, and I just want to talk quickly about my experience at Your World Within Live and Top Notch Live. There are two events that Alan and Kevin both co-hosted. I remember being so nervous going to each one of them because I wasn't sure what to expect. I wasn't sure what was going to be happening or the people that I was going to meet. But I remember coming away from both of them with a sense of accomplishing something that I didn't think that I was going to accomplish. I was able to go outside of my comfort zone, talk to people that I wouldn't normally talk to, and do a testimonial, which was so nerve-wracking during those two times. But I'm super excited for this event because it's going to be incredible. We have incredible speakers, and I'm excited for you to learn more about yourself and for you to get outside your comfort zone.
So I don't think I've ever told this story before, Kev. You have told this, but I haven't. I want to give you a lot of credit for this. Maybe I've talked about it. When we had Steven Kotler on the show, I have been studying neuroscience for many, many years, the human condition, and I read The Art of Impossible, which was Steven Kotler's book, to prepare for this interview, but I had been reading Steven Kotler's stuff for many years prior to that, Bold and The Rise of Superman, some of the other books. And when we were on that interview, credit to Kev, you did the opposite of what someone who was faking it would do. You said, honestly, I was scared as hell. After the interview finished, this is the host of the show saying, I was so terrified to be on this interview because you two are so brilliant and I don't feel as intelligent as you two. And when he told Steven Kotler that, Stephen Kotler had more respect for Kevin, not less, because he knew. Right? You know what I mean? He knows that you weren't studying neuroscience quite as frequently as we were, right? And so you just admitted it, and his reverence for you went way up. And so my point here is you're never going to be a student if you're too busy pretending to be a leader. What if Kevin, after that interview, was trying to like teach Stephen Kotler stuff versus someone who's been studying and documenting and writing books on peak performance and neuroscience for his entire career? It doesn't make sense for Kevin to be a leader in that room. Now, if Stephen Kotler wants to start a podcast, he should call Kevin, and I agree with that. Kevin was willing to put the student cap on. What him and I have found is that sometimes in this industry, people are so used to being the coach or being the leader or being the one who's perceived to know that they have a lot of trouble learning from us, even though they sincerely should. And so when we got on an interview with Stephen Kotler could kind of tell, okay, nice, this is someone who's really studied this stuff. Let's pitch and catch. Let's do it. And Kev just owned it. He just owned it and said, I'm going to be a student here. Even though I'm the host of this show, I'm going to be a student and really lean into the truth. And I give you all the credit for that.
Appreciate
But
that.
if you're out there listening or watching, that's another reason why not to fake it till you make it, because you're gonna miss out on the opportunity to learn from some incredible people who just really have put in the work, right? If you go into the gym and you pretend you know it all, and you run into someone who's been doing the gym for decades, you're not going to learn from them if you're still trying to pretend, if you let your ego get in the way. I remember when my first fitness coach was in unreasonably good shape, and I went into his personal training office and said, hey, what do you think I should be doing? I was talking to him about what I was eating. I said I was drinking milk. Is that good or bad? I was talking about macros and calories, and I was just such a student. That made sense for me to be a student. And then I ended up becoming really close friends with this person, and then he was learning from me on entrepreneurship and finance and money and business, because at that time I was working for a company called Cognex, and I was making a lot more money. Well, not anymore. It's interesting that I can say that differently now. I was making a lot of money back then, which now since we've been back on the rise here, but it doesn't make sense to be a leader in every room. It doesn't. But if you're a pretender, if you're faking it till you make it, you might be missing out on some really good opportunities to learn. Just like that friend who didn't want to snowboard at the summit because he didn't want to be quote unquote found out or look worse than us. What if he asked us questions on how to become a better snowboarder? What did you do? What was your experience? You know, what mountains did you train on? And how did you learn how to carve both ways? And you know, there's so much value in being a student when you should be a student. And so that's the lesson here is close your heart and mind to the people that are pretending to be leaders. Don't let them sling mud in your glass. In other words, don't let them give you bad advice that's not based on real merit. And more importantly, open your glass up, your heart and your mind, to wisdom, to people who sincerely do know. One of my mentors wrote 24 books. Like, of course, I'm going to ask him questions. It makes sense. I want to be an author too, right? He's 75 years old. He's got so much wisdom. He's got a PhD. There's so much to gain from learning and from asking questions. So you'll never be a student if you're trying to fake it till you make it because you don't want to be found out. And you're too busy pretending to be the leader when you're really not. And that's holding you back more than you think.
That was so brutal. It was like, so Alan is being very intellectual with Stephen Kotler. I'm going to be a funny guy. I'm going to revert to who I am as a human. Let me crack some jokes. Well-timed jokes are always good. So people appreciate those. So that was definitely very, very difficult. It's interesting too, though, because in this arena, there isn't a lot of you can fake it till you make it, but when the camera comes on and the microphone comes on and you're live, there's not much to hide behind. So I do believe that you and I are in a good position where we get tested a lot more than other people. There are apps out there, and I've taken screenshots of this and put it on my story because I always try to highlight this stuff. I always try to highlight this because I think it's important. There's apps on your phone where you can take a picture of yourself and you can edit on abs. You can edit abs. You can put tattoos on there. You can change the way your body looks. The filters on Instagram now are so wild. They're so wild. I look like a different person. Every once in a while, if you follow me on Instagram, I will take a picture and then I will take a picture with a filter and I don't look like the same human. And that's not, it's a couple things. It's not serving me and it's not serving anybody watching. Eventually, I hope to have everybody who watches this, everybody who watches the replay, everybody who listens to us, I hope that I'll be able to see all of you in person at some time. I hope you'll see Alan and I on stage or in the lobby or, on the way to the venue or in the gym, wherever it may be. I don't want you to look at me and say, wait, that Kevin looks like that. That's not what he looks like online. I want to look the same. So if you are faking it so you make it when it comes to technology, there are apps out there to make your voice better, to make your skin clearer, to make your abs better, to make everything better. And if you are using that to fix problems, then you don't have to solve those problems. And eventually, when you see somebody in real life, it's going to be weird. It's going to be a super weird interaction when you don't look anything like you do online. I know Alan's going to speak to this too. And there's that meme of something along the lines of make sure you don't look too different from your profile picture, because if you ever go missing, nobody's going to be able to find you. That's a thing. Like, that's an actual thing where people look completely different. So that part of it, not being able to look in the actual mirror and get the feedback of yourself, or asking other people for feedback too, it's very, very dangerous. And I'm always cognizant of that. When I see somebody post a video, I always look to see what kind of filter they're using, because they don't look like that. And you knowing that is important, because if you're comparing yourself to other people faking it, you're not going to feel very good about yourself.
So many rabbit holes to go down in the digital world.
That was a big one.
It's huge right now. If you're more focused on looking good in the digital world than in your real world, again, I want to remind everyone, it's not fulfilling. And I have a bunch of stories about that. But my next point here is, if you do succeed by faking it, quote unquote, you'll be more focused on holding on to the success than actually doubling down on it. Because if you created it, so for example, Kevin and I on this podcast, we use this podcast a lot as an example because it's the most tangible and relatable, because you're obviously listening or watching this right now. We understand how we got here. We dissected it every step of the way. We figured out, Kevin created we co-created an 18-point podcast assessment. And after I get off of other shows, I often ask how they're doing and their show, how it's going, especially if it's a really good show. I literally say to them, I'll just send you this asset for free. And I have a disclaimer. This other show I was on last week, absolute sweetheart, great show. I was like, this world needs more personal development. Let me just help her any way I can. I said, I'm going to send you this asset, but here's the disclaimer. This is not designed to make you feel good about your podcast. Okay? So I want you to take this 18-point podcast assessment, and I want you to, it's like a pyramid, it's built from the ground up, and I want you to rate yourself from 0 to 10 on each of these categories. And since you're new, just understand it is not going to make you feel good. All right, Kevin and I probably, if we did this, rate ourselves from 0 to 10, we'd probably feel decent about where we're at now, but that's because we're 900 episodes in and 5 years in, and we've grinded our way to get to where we are. The original point that I was trying to make, if you fake it till you make it and you actually do make it, you're going to have to fight to hold on to that. You're not going to know how to double down on it, because how do you double down on faking it? If you don't have the real skills, what's a good example of this? Imagine you want to build an app, but you've never coded in your life. You have no one in your corner who has ever done software. See, I got a degree in computer engineering, and I understand how to create an app. So when we create our app optimal, which we already sort of have, I understand the ins and outs well enough to know what I don't know and what I do know. And so I can find people who know their stuff, and I can guide the train, but I'm not doing the coding myself. But the only reason why I can guide the train is because I have done the coding myself. I have countless hours in the lab, late night, overnight, with electrical and computer engineering. And so now you're going to see our app, and eventually that will really take off. I feel very confident in that. But it won't be because I was faking it. It will be because we had someone in our corner who really knows how to do this stuff, at least well enough to lead effectively. And that's another example. Is if you've ever had a really good idea and you're like, oh, I had that idea before. I had the idea for Uber before Uber did. Or I had the idea for Amazon before Amazon did. It's like the idea doesn't matter that much. What matters is the execution consistently over time. We have a habit tracker that we have so many people using, and I'm so grateful. But anyone can create a habit tracker. Not everyone can get people to track their habits. See, those are two very different things. And so if you do stumble upon success because you're faking it, you're going to have to fight to hang on to that. You're not going to be able to double, triple, and quadruple down on it. Whenever Kevin and I find more success, we know how to replicate it because we reverse engineered it. And if we don't know how to replicate it, we immediately dissect it and try to figure out what created that success so that we can.
My point that I was just going to give, Alan, goes to that. And the example, I think the best example for this to get people thinking is the lottery analogy. If, say there's somebody out there right now, and this is probably the way it works more often than not, but say there's somebody out there right now who hasn't studied finance a lot. And again, nothing against that person. I hadn't studied finance in my entire life up until 2 years ago, really. And they are to hit the lottery for $150 million. The odds of them keeping that money for a long period of time are very, very low. Why? Because they did not design and or learn the habits or strategy or deeper understanding necessary to make that money. So what are the odds they understand how to hang on to it and grow it? Just like if Alan and I said, hey, we're going to find 2 people to host this show and we're just going to take off and we're going to let them do their thing. You got a great listener base. You have family members that listen to this. Like, you are good to go. There's income. Do your thing. The odds of this being successful over the course of the next year is very small because they don't know what we did to build it. So that is the point that I want to make on this is it's not sustainable. Like Alan said, if you fake it till you make it, and you get a result that you're longing for, and then you have to produce that result again and again and again, you're going to be in some trouble. And if you get something bigger than you expected, it's going to crash and burn to the ground. It is, because you're not going to have the foundation, not only from a character standpoint, but from a skills standpoint. You look at these people who become major celebrities when they're young, and I'm not saying they're faking it, but they don't have the character to sustain the results. And then things go wrong and they get into trouble or they get into whatever vices. That's one of the reasons, is because they're not capable of sustaining that from a character level. And that's what happens too when you fake it.
So, Kev, what was it? I know that you and I have in the past as young men, and I think this is a really important thing for everyone watching or listening to reflect on. When was a time when you were faking it? Would you be willing to be vulnerable and share that? And then what's your new perspective on that? Although I think your Wi-Fi might be a little off. I think you're good. You're good.
Am I good? I don't see anything. When was I faking it? One of the biggest points of my story is when I was in my mid-20s. I was faking everything. I was faking that I was confident. I was faking that I was successful. I was faking that I was good with money. Everybody thought I was good with money because I made a lot of money, but little did they know behind the scenes I was texting you asking if I could afford to pay $6,000 or $7,000 off on a credit card, and I had $15,000 in the bank, and you're like, yeah, like, why wouldn't you be able to? I was like, I don't know. Did the monies make sense? I don't know. So CFO Jeff. At that point in my life, I was faking with everything. I was faking confidence. I had to get drunk to go out to the bar. One of my things I tried to do was stay sober and go out to the bar as a fear-chasing thing for me and you. That was a thing I did. Everything I was faking.
What do you now understand about the downside of that for everyone? Like, what would you do differently, or what would you say to that, Kevin?
I would just say, just admit the fact that you're not what you say you are, because if you don't admit the fact that you're not what you say you are or what you want to be, you will never be it. You will never develop the right habits to actually be that type of person. It's almost like you can pretend you're a really good fighter. You can pretend you're really strong. You can pretend you're really good at a sport, but you'll never actually be good or strong or a proficient fighter if you never get in the ring and get your butt kicked. That's just par for the course. So I think you have to admit that, look, I've been living a lie and I'm not what I say I am. And the point of me admitting that is so I can be what I've been saying I am, so I can really level that up. I think there's humility that has to happen. And it took me a long time, and it took me a hard breakup and near suicide. So it's definitely not easy, but admitting those things is one of the best things you can ever do. It's empowering.
Fire. Absolute
It's really
fire.
empowering.
My last point was you don't develop real confidence if you're faking it, which is exactly what you just said. And I know that you used to be seen as very confident, even though you weren't.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that you're willing to share that.
Of course.
Real confidence comes from your actual abilities. So whether it's making money or achieving your dream physique or achieving, I remember this, I'll share this with you. So Emilia and I just released the Conscious Couples podcast, and the very first episode is our love story. And I was reflecting on this last night because we were recording our episode, Kev. And I remember this. You and I, way prior to me meeting Emilia, were talking to the team. It was Tiff, Amy, myself, and you at the time. I remember I was in the Impact Fitness gym parking lot on the phone with you, the team. And I had like a lot of uncertainty in my voice when it came to attracting my dream partner. And you said, Alan, it makes sense that you're not confident in this arena. You've never succeeded yet. And that was a real pivotal moment for me, because after that, I realized I'm not actually confident. Normally, I'm like a very confident person in my abilities. When it comes to my abilities to achieve something, normally I'm very confident. In this case, I wasn't at all, and you could tell. And it's like, well, why? And I realize now in hindsight, reflecting back on it, I just didn't believe that Emilia existed. I used to say this, I'm looking for a red Lamborghini with black leather interior, and it also has to be able to fly, and it's got a wing on it, and it's got to be able to go to the moon and the stars. And it was an analogy of like, I'm looking to buy a car that doesn't exist, and buy a car is the wrong analogy, but you know what I'm saying? And I didn't believe, I used to say this to Kevin, I want someone who's more aspirational than I am. I want someone who's more dedicated to their mission than I am. I want someone who's more future-oriented than I am. And even you, Kev, said...
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Who has bigger goals than you do? That's literally what you said, right? I started to believe it in advance. I started to believe it was possible in advance. And so real confidence comes from real abilities. I started to believe in advance that I could attract that partner. And now I'm really confident in my ability to succeed with Emilia because I'm with the right person. And so I used to be very unconfident in my abilities in intimate relationships. I used to struggle in my abilities to believe that I could. I'll never forget when Emilia said, we're never going to fight. And I remember thinking to myself, like, never? I want to be with you forever. And she said, no, Alan, when you fight, it implies there's a winner. And when you fight, no one wins. Everyone loses. And now we're 2 years and 3 months in, and we've never fought once. We've had passionate, challenging discussions at times, but we've never raised our voice. We've never fought. We've never stormed out. And I would have never believed that was even possible back then. And so I would not be in the relationship I'm in right now if I didn't work on vulnerability and work on believing in myself and work on myself physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. If I didn't develop the virtues within myself in advance before I met Emilia, and if I didn't fail forward all that time and try to learn intimate relationships and try to study, I remember watching seminars on relationships, trying to figure this thing out. If I didn't do all that work in advance, the real work behind the scenes when no one was watching, there's no way I'd be able to go 2.5 years almost without ever having a fight. And Emilia, same deal, right? And so that's my last point here. If you're faking it till you make it, you're never going to develop real confidence. You're never going to develop real abilities. You're never going to develop real strengths and real personal development. And your foundation's not going to be strong. You can't build a skyscraper on the sand. You have to build it on a really strong foundation. And that foundation is built. Personal development is personal. That foundation is built behind the scenes when no one's watching. Kevin and I are coaches. We know this. If you don't do the homework, the calls are great and we can help you tell you what to do. We cannot do it for you. It is impossible for us to do it for you. You cannot get fit by thinking about fitness. You can only get fit by actually being in the gym, lifting the real weights. You cannot get fit by the Instagram video in the gym. You can only get fit by actually doing the work. And that's when no one's watching. So if you're out there and you've been faking it till you make it on any level, we're all guilty of this to some extent. My main point here is stop. It's not fulfilling. It's not going to sustain. It's not going to give you real results. And Kevin and I, during our life or death situations, his suicidal ideation and my car accident, we woke up to that. We stopped faking it. That was the last day I would ever fake anything, is when I was 26 years old. And the compound effect of that has been truly magnificent.
Okay, I got 10 seconds real quick. Last one from me before we do Q&A. You either will say no to really good opportunities or you will not be ready for good opportunities. Alan and I have had some amazing opportunities to interview people in person. I remember we got invited to interview Evan Carmichael in Toronto. And we show up there and it's in his salsa studio and there's this professional camera with a bunch of lights and it's basically, okay, you ready? Go. And there's no cuts, there's no mistakes. It's just you doing it. That was thousands of hours behind the scenes that made us not only feel confident enough to say yes to driving 10 hours to Toronto and doing this, but we also over-delivered, right? So that's the biggest thing, I think, for me. Not only are you not ready for real opportunities, you're probably going to say no to them. And these opportunities can open a lot of doors for you. We're now, we were mentored by Evan, and Evan's become a friend. I'm going to bring in Amy. Next Level Nation. If you want to have the best year of your life, you have to surround yourself with some next level human beings. And Alan and I were talking about this on one of our episodes earlier. There's so many people out there who want better, but they aren't surrounded by people who want better for them. And it's very hard to accomplish your goals, never mind doing it on your own. March 26th, 2022, Next Level Live. We went and toured the venue. It is beautiful. We paid for everybody's parking. You pull into the parking garage under the hotel, take the elevator up. You'll be in the ballroom, and we will get this thing going. It is only $97. We are more than 50% sold out, so make sure you get your tickets. And again, not only are you going to learn, but you're going to be in a room of people that are authentically themselves, and you're going to be authentically yourself. And you're going to be able to talk about big goals and big dreams, and nobody's going to make you feel bad for that. So everything you will need on the repurpose is in the show notes, and you'll get to see Aim too, which that's why everybody's going to come anyway to see Amy.
She's going to be DJing. DJ Amy. Are you out there and you're like, gosh darn it, I can't come to Next Level Live because I'm not in that geographical location, or maybe I'm not in that country and COVID, whatever.
Womp, womp, womp.
But you're like, I still want to get around a next level group of people. Next Level group coaching is on fire. 5 different groups: Ambitious Army, Gratitude with Attitude, Legacy by Design, Pursuit of Excellence, and Tribe of Abundance. 5 groups have been absolutely on fire. The latest and greatest is Legacy by Design. Amy's an assistant coach in there. This program is very well polished at this point. There's a WhatsApp group. It's on fire. I think I'm looking at 70 messages every day when I open my WhatsApp. It's awesome. Everybody's rolling. And there's a habit tracker, bi-weekly sessions with Kevin and myself. There's 2 assistant coaches, Sarah and Amy, there to guide you every step of the way. We've got Matt on the mobile app. I mean, if you want to be a part of a team that is committed to getting to the next level, that's what Next Level group coaching is. There's a link in the show notes. And Amy, because we're live, would you mind please putting a link to nextleveluniverse.com/group coaching as well in the comments? And I can show you how to do that as well. So, Amy, if you go to the main website and click on group coaching, you can get that URL there.
I think it's also in our shared notes too.
Perfect.